Today, I want you to get brutally honest with yourself because honesty is the birthplace of transformation. Every single person in this room has untapped power inside them, strength, creativity, brilliance, and potential that could reshape their life completely. But too often, that power gets buried under one thing: laziness. Not because you're weak, not because you're incapable, but because you've been trained to settle for comfort over progress, for routine over hunger, for the familiar over the extraordinary. Laziness is often misunderstood as a fixed personality trait, but in reality, it is nothing more than a repeated pattern reinforced over time by convenience, comfort, and fear disguised as apathy. When people label themselves as lazy, they trap their identity inside a box that feels permanent, as if their behavior is an unchangeable flaw rather than a habit created by circumstances and reinforced by repetition. The truth is that laziness emerges when the brain learns to associate effort with discomfort and discomfort with danger, so it naturally gravitates toward the easier, safer path. But patterns are not destiny. And the moment you recognize that laziness is simply a conditioned response rather than a core characteristic, you reclaim the power to rewrite your behavior from the inside out. This shift in perspective is transformative because it removes shame and replaces it with responsibility, and responsibility is the doorway to change. Think about how habits form. They start with a trigger, lead to the easiest possible action, and create a reward. Over time, the brain learns that avoiding effort brings temporary relief, even if it steals long-term fulfillment. This is why someone may feel lazy not because they lack ambition, but because their mind has been trained to protect them from discomfort by pulling them toward the simplest option. When you understand that laziness is nothing more than a loop, trigger, avoidance, relief, you can begin interrupting that loop by choosing a different action at the moment the trigger appears. Even a small shift, like standing up when you feel the impulse to sit back, or taking one step when your mind tells you to wait, starts to rewire that pattern. Your identity begins to change the moment your actions contradict the old story you've been telling yourself. The power lies in recognizing that you're not battling who you are, but what you've practiced. This removes the emotional weight of thinking something is wrong with you and replaces it with the empowering realization that you can practice something different. With every decision to act despite resistance, you weaken the old pattern and strengthen a new one built on discipline, clarity, and momentum. When you treat laziness as a pattern rather than a personality trait, you give yourself permission to grow beyond it, and growth becomes possible the moment you decide the pattern no longer serves the life you want to create. Your potential begins to expand the moment you stop negotiating with your excuses, because excuses are the invisible chains that hold your greatness hostage. Every time you tell yourself you're too tired, too busy, not ready, or that tomorrow will be better, you reinforce a mental contract that trades your long-term success for short-term comfort. These excuses often sound logical, even protective, but they are simply barriers disguised as reasons designed to keep you within the limits of what feels familiar. When you continue to negotiate with them, you give them authority over your choices, your habits, and ultimately the direction of your life. Real change begins the moment you decide those excuses no longer deserve a seat at the decision-making table. Most people underestimate how powerful their inner dialogue is. Your thoughts shape your actions, and your actions shape your identity. When your thoughts are filled with negotiations like just 5 more minutes or I'll do it later, your actions follow that pattern of delay and avoidance. Over time, this creates a self-perception that you're someone who doesn't follow through, someone who always stops short of their potential. But the opposite is also true. The moment you commit to a decision without allowing excuses to interfere, you build a different identity, one grounded in discipline and integrity. Each time you take action despite the resistance, you send your brain a new message: I keep my promises. That message compounds into confidence, and confidence becomes fuel for an even higher level of performance. Your potential isn't unlocked through massive leaps. It's unlocked through consistent moments where you choose forward movement over comfort. When you remove negotiations, you remove the space where doubt and hesitation thrive. You create a direct link between intention and action, and that link becomes the very thing that elevates your standards. High performers aren't necessarily more talented or more gifted. They're simply individuals who refuse to let excuses dictate their behavior. They understand that excuses will always show up, but listening to them is optional. What begins as a single choice becomes a pattern, and that pattern becomes your new baseline. The moment you stop bargaining with your excuses, you create mental clarity, emotional strength, and a new relationship with discipline. You shift from being someone who reacts to circumstances to someone who directs them. Your potential grows not because you suddenly become more capable, but because you remove the internal friction that once slowed you down. When excuses lose their power, your potential finally has room to rise. Discomfort is not the enemy, it is the signal that you are on the edge of growth, the doorway through which your true potential begins to emerge. Most people spend their lives avoiding discomfort, mistaking it for failure, pain, or danger, but in reality, it is the catalyst that separates those who live ordinary lives from those who achieve extraordinary results. Every breakthrough, every moment of transformation begins when you step into what feels uncomfortable, when you push past the urge to retreat to familiarity, and when you embrace the tension that comes from doing something that challenges you. Growth cannot happen in the comfort zone because comfort is simply the familiar patterns, behaviors, and routines that have already been mastered. To become more than you are today, you must learn to welcome discomfort as a teacher rather than a threat. Discomfort shows up in many forms: physical, emotional, mental, or even social, but its presence is a sign that you are expanding, stretching beyond the boundaries of what you once thought possible. It might be the soreness after a workout that strengthens your body, the anxiety before speaking in public that builds confidence, or the frustration of facing a problem that sharpens your problem-solving skills. Each of these moments carries a lesson and an opportunity. The people who succeed at the highest levels are not those who avoid pain or stress. They are the ones who run toward it, understanding that discomfort is the fuel that drives transformation. The ability to tolerate, manage, and even seek discomfort is what creates resilience, courage, and unstoppable momentum. When you consciously step into discomfort, you teach yourself that resistance does not equal defeat, and that temporary unease is the pathway to lasting reward. It rewires your mind to associate challenge with opportunity, effort with growth, and persistence with success. Every time you confront a difficult situation instead of retreating, you build a mental muscle that strengthens your capacity to take on bigger challenges. The act of leaning into discomfort becomes a habit, and over time it reshapes your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who does not crumble when faced with difficulty, someone who rises above fear and hesitation, and someone whose confidence is rooted in experience rather than avoidance. Discomfort is inevitable in life, but your response to it is not predetermined. Choosing to face it, learn from it, and harness it transforms struggle into mastery by reframing discomfort as a necessary companion. On the journey to excellence, you shift from living reactively to living intentionally. Each moment of tension becomes a stepping stone, each challenge an invitation to evolve, and each obstacle an opportunity to demonstrate the depth of your commitment to your own growth. Embracing discomfort consistently builds character, sharpens focus, and cultivates the resilience required to achieve extraordinary success. Small daily actions are the hidden engine behind extraordinary success. Yet so many people overlook them because they focus only on monumental goals, thinking that transformation requires massive, immediate change. The truth is that consistent, seemingly minor efforts compound over time into results far greater than any single heroic act could achieve. Every action you take, no matter how small, sends a signal to your brain and your body that you are committed, that you are capable, and that you are building momentum. Success is not a single event. It is the accumulation of consistent steps, repeated day after day, that gradually reshape your habits, your mindset, and ultimately your life. Momentum is the magic that small daily actions create. When you commit to showing up consistently, even in ways that feel insignificant in the moment, you start a chain reaction. Each completed task builds confidence, reinforces discipline, and strengthens your belief in your own abilities. For example, reading a few pages every day, exercising for 10 minutes, or tackling a single task before distractions can seem trivial. But over weeks and months, these actions compound into mastery, stamina, and a sense of self-efficacy that becomes unstoppable. The key is not perfection, but persistence. Small actions repeated consistently are far more powerful than sporadic bursts of intense effort because they gradually shift your identity into that of a person who follows it rough and achieves results. Another critical element is the psychology of progress. Human beings are wired to respond to motion. When we see even the smallest forward movement, Our brains release motivation and reward chemicals that encourage us to keep going. In contrast, inactivity or waiting for the perfect moment triggers stagnation, self-doubt, and procrastination. By focusing on small, achievable steps, you create a pattern of progress that builds on itself. This pattern gradually rewires your habits, moving you from reactive behavior to intentional action, from scattered energy to focused execution, and from potential untapped to potential realized. Small daily actions also create resilience. When challenges arise, those who have practiced consistent effort are far more likely to adapt, persist, and overcome obstacles. The discipline developed through daily action becomes a shield against distraction, discouragement, and setbacks. Over time, these seemingly minor choices compound into a life that reflects your highest values, ambitions, and abilities. The most successful individuals do not wait for motivation to strike. They rely on routine, consistency, and incremental improvement. Every decision you make to act, no matter how small, contributes to the architecture of your success. Your habits become the scaffolding for your goals, your persistence the engine that drives you forward, and your daily actions the evidence that you are committed to becoming the person capable of achieving the extraordinary. You already have everything you need within you. The problem is that most people never recognize it. They search outside themselves for validation, guidance, and tools, thinking that some external source will provide the power, clarity, or motivation they lack. But the truth is that all the strength, creativity, intelligence, and resilience required to achieve your dreams is already inside you, waiting to be activated. The challenge is not acquiring something new. It is discovering and unleashing what is dormant, hidden beneath fear, doubt, and years of conditioning that tell you to settle for less. Your potential is not dependent on circumstances, opportunities, or external approval. It is dependent on your ability to tap into your inner resources and trust yourself to take consistent, courageous action. Most people underestimate the depth of their inner capacity because they measure themselves by what they see on the surface. They look at obstacles, setbacks, and the apparent advantages of others and think, I don't have what it takes. But the truth is that your inner capacity is not visible to the casual observer. It is cultivated through mindset, perseverance, and the willingness to stretch beyond comfort. Every time you confront a challenge, make a disciplined choice, or push past resistance, you uncover more of your own power. Every time you trust yourself to take the next step, you reinforce the belief that you are capable of far more than you have ever imagined. Activating your inner potential begins with awareness and belief. Awareness means recognizing that what you need is already inside you. Belief means trusting that your capabilities are sufficient to take action, even when the path is uncertain. Many people fail not because they lack resources, but because they fail to believe that they possess the resources already. Once you understand that everything you need, creativity, focus, resilience, energy, and determination, is within your control, you stop looking outward for permission and start taking full responsibility for your life. The process of tapping into your internal power is both simple and profound. It requires you to shift your mindset from limitation to abundance, from dependency to self-reliance, and from hesitation to action. Every choice you make to step forward, confront fear, or persist through difficulty strengthens the internal infrastructure of your potential. The more you rely on your inner resources, the more resilient, confident, and unstoppable you become. External circumstances may fluctuate, obstacles may appear, and setbacks may test you, but the strength you cultivate within yourself remains untouchable. Recognizing that you already have everything you need changes the way you act, think, and approach life. It eliminates waiting, doubt, and procrastination because you understand that the power to create, achieve, and transform is already inside you and has been there all along.